Hey there, welcome back. Hopefully, you're watching this as a teacher after you just watched the student version of this, because I want to add in some things in terms of follow up of what you should remember if you're leading this activity in your classroom. First off, I just want to remind you that these four commitments matter probably even more from your perspective of making sure these things are happening in your classroom. The intention part is critical, but then also making sure students are reading the text 3 different times, that they are actively reading in terms of getting messy with the text, and that you are building in discussion along the way. Remember, there are 3 levels of iceberging the text and different steps to complete with each one. Refer back to the previous video with a thorough walkthrough of these 3 levels. And I've got my key terminology here. This document's also posted underneath in the description of this video. But let's get to my teacher advice. So first off, it's really important to create space for students to do this interactive iceberg in the text. And if you just give them a paper that is full of text and no room for them to write, you're doing them a disservice. I usually do something like this. Give them space off to the left to roadmap for level 1, give space off to the right to annotate, and then space below to react. Remember, you can just copy and paste this onto your own template and work from there and put the text itself. I also like this because this reminds me to not have too long of a text in the center. If I do too long of a text, it just doesn't fit, and that, I think, avoids some conundrums from a planning process. If you want them to be doing this without a text, you can do this with just this, where you would have them roadmap above, and they can just have bullet points. You can even have different columns because road mapping does not take up a lot of space. You just have them number the paragraphs and then work from there. For level 2, I split it over 2 different boxes. On this side, they would actually write down the quote that they were highlighting. So let's say they highlighted the word laundry on the text, and maybe you said like laundry, paragraph 3 or paragraph 5. Then over here, they could say, oh, this is important because da 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 da. So you're asking them to list both the quotes themselves and the annotation. So it's a little bit more work for them if you do it this way. Just keep that in mind. And then the reactions still should be underneath. So both these templates work. The easiest way, though, that I think to do this is I just give them a blank thing. It looks like this. They've got the text. I ask them to go to Google Docs. I have them make a copy for themselves, and they do all the work. And then they share it with me when they're done. And then they also have a digital copy for themselves. So feel free to do this as a digital activity. I like doing it with highlighters and paper when I have the opportunity, but I know printing copies can be limited for a teacher. So what this looks like in terms of an agenda in my classroom, this part's important, not just the naming of the intentions of why we're reading, and I also have to foreshadow this, making sure that the text I chose fits into what we were talking about. Maybe it's historical context of the novel we're reading. Maybe it connects thematically to our unit. I want to think about why we are reading this so I can guide their naming of intentions. I also want to have some sort of preview discussion. Maybe it's what do you know? What do you want to know? What did you learn chart? Maybe it's some guiding broader question that connects to their lives. But you want to get them thinking about the topic of the text before they start reading. Then we get into our 3 reads. And this takes some time, but you'll see I underline the partner sharing at each level because you need to make sure that you build in not only partner sharing, but also whole class debrief. If you skip the partner sharing and go to the whole class debrief, a lot of kids get off the hook with not talking, so you want to build in this. Maybe it's small group sharing at every level, not just at the end, even after first read. So don't, you're tempted to take shortcuts. We all run out of time as teachers. Make sure you build in all 3 of those and then get your whole class debrief. Also, I highly recommend following up with some sort of writing activity. It's a good homework activity if you run out of time. Exit ticket, some way for you to assess their understanding of the text, but also to push their thinking to a whole nother deeper level by forcing them to write academically and professionally about it. There are 4 trap doors I just wanted to make mention of before releasing you to try it out and plan your own lesson. First thing is, and I've mentioned it multiple times in this video, if you pick a long text, you're not going to have time to read it at a quality level. So quality actually matters more than quantity in this case. So just keep that in mind, that you want quality. You want to make sure it has a lot to say. and that matters more than the length of the text itself. You can use excerpts, totally fine. Don't feel like you have to use the whole text. And this also connects to this trapdoor. Make sure you don't just like pick some generic test prep passage doesn't have a lot of depth or connection to whatever else you were talking about. Because when you're previewing this, and you should go through this activity as a teacher individually first before you lead this discussion with your students, if it feels empty to you, it's going to feel really empty to them. So make sure the text is rich and has a lot of different things to analyze. This is another one, and I've done this many times. I think most teachers watching this have. You look at the clock, you're running out of time. What's the easiest thing to cut? Well, they got to read it, so you can't cut the reading. So let's just cut the partner sharing, or just speed through it. And that is such a critical part to this process. Do not skip the pairing and the sharing and the whole class debrief. Make sure that you build that time around it. Time also has to connect with this last trapdoor, a poor landing. You need to make sure that you don't rush the end. I have been in that classroom where we're doing a great job with the first and second step. We get halfway through this, they're doing their second reading, and as they're reading quietly, I look at the clock and see we have 5 minutes left. I toss them the exit ticket and say, hey, do it really quickly, write something down so I can have something to put in the grade book. You have to land the lesson. That means that this has to be not only arrived at authentically, but you need to create enough time for this, and really enough time for this too. Not everyone has block schedule. This might be broken up over multiple days. Also a reminder, you can do this with short text. It doesn't have to be a long text, but make sure your landing is strong. So that being the case, I have lots of resources and samples and things that you can look at, but I just wanted to walk through the iceberging process from the teacher's perspective as a separate video that I didn't think students necessarily needed or was relevant to them. We all believe deeply in close reading. We all understand the importance of making it all the way to the bottom of the text. The biggest thing is having a system and committing to it and really believing in the value of close reading, especially in today's society with all the scrolling and surface level reading. It's our job as English teachers to build a wall around the concept of close reading and making sure that it is something that we protect in our curriculum when there's so many temptations to look otherwise. So if you have any questions or ideas or suggestions, please feel free to reach out, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video.